Cool. We're live. Tim, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Well, and so I really wanted to bring you on real quick because you and I had talked about getting this podcast started a few months back, and
Yeah.
you may be one of the few people that listened to most of it and actually marched ahead. And I see you just released episode 3, so that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Thank you.
Um, So I more wanted to just ask you about why you started this thing, and then kind of when you and I were talking, the gap that you saw in the industry, and then how you're hoping, um, to solve that, and then maybe we can go from there.
Sure. Absolutely. So, I have, in my position, I have a great privilege of being able to go to various conventions and areas where I can speak and shed some light and some knowledge on some good topics throughout aviation. So I was able to speak at Bombardier Safety Stand Down for a few years in a row, MBAA at the National Safety Forum as well. And I always found that at the end of it, I had such great questions coming back to me from the audience. And it was never anything that I had left as as a gap throughout the presentation, but it was some really great topics. So I started doing a couple videos on LinkedIn, just some very specific focused topics on LinkedIn, and the videos did very well. People kept asking more questions. I got a lot more messages in, and that was some great motivation to possibly start a podcast. Reached out to you. Excuse me. You gave me some great advice, some good programs to trial and work with, and that brought us up to today. I did the launch episode, which was just me. I had one of our AOG technicians, Matt Nenzowski from Constant Aviation for episode 2. And then I just had one of the greats of aviation, Dr. Tony Kern, on for episode 3. And it's really going extremely well. I have a couple more people lined up already for January and February of 2023. And I'm excited to see where it goes.
Nice, good for you, man.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Hell
Thank you.
yeah. So what is? I know you and I talked about like kind of this gap that you saw
Hmm.
in the industry, just at least in terms of what people were talking about when it came to safety.
Hmm.
So, w- is that something that you're planning on addressing? And is that also something that you were starting to talk about in those videos you put out on LinkedIn? And
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I'm a big podcast listener. Yeah, it's a 45-minute drive for me to get to work, 45 back. So if I don't need a good wake up call, a running playlist, I usually jump into a podcast. And I have, my favorites because I don't just use them for entertainment. I want it for, self improvement. So to improve my faith, I'm listening to Louis Giglio. To improve finances, Dave Ramsey. Leadership qualities, Jocko Willink. And I thought, in my position, what can I do to enhance how I operate as a safety leader in aviation? Now, there are some great aviation podcasts. NBAA's got some. Thoroughbred Aviation has a great podcast as well. And there are some great safety podcasts, but there was never a good bridge between the two. There is not an aviation safety podcast. And especially, there's hardly any information out for our guys on the ground. So I really wanted to start it with a focus. That's why I say it's aviation safety from the ground up. I wanted to hit the maintenance and the ground op side extremely hard with some great information and a lot of people who understand the struggles and the things that go on with our maintainers on the ground.
well,
A
and
lot of times. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
so how is that conveyed now, or is that conveyed, or is it kind of like a scattered message, or are these a bunch of different groups of
Hmm.
like workers, like workforce groups that
Hmm.
aren't really communicating? Like, what's really going on that you're seeing now?
I'm seeing a lot when you think of aviation safety. Most of the time, it immediately goes to the pilot side of the house.
Mm.
People think what keeps the aircraft safe in the air is the pilot, and rightly so, but only about 50%. The other 50% is the ground side. There are so many checks and balances that go into maintaining the aircraft properly to keep it in the air to allow the pilot to fly it safely. And I don't think, like I said on the podcast a couple weeks ago, all the fanfare is always directed towards the pilots. It's never towards the ground side. So I think that's where we see a large gap. Is there's not a lot of focus on these guys. There's not a lot of attention paid to it, and people kind of gloss over it. Tony Kern had mentioned that all of 2022 was the was the year of the aviation mechanic, because these guys and gals go through so much that it just gets glossed over a lot.
Yeah, a ton. The amount of regulations and paperwork and
Mhm.
everything and processes and procedures they got to go through is crazy. And especially
Mhm.
when you start getting into the 135 and the 145 and 121 side, it's it's no joke.
No, absolutely not. It gets extremely confusing of who's doing what, what's going where. Um, I think we I think one of the best benefits of being in aviation, we are the safest form of transportation out there today, and it's because we've learned from the mistakes we made in the past. We know how to assess risk extremely well, and all those confusing areas. We have some incredible subject matter experts that are able to tone that risk down for us.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and so with this podcast, right? So
Mhm,
if this is a conversation that's not really happening right now, or it's not happening effectively, what are you hoping
mhm.
to do with this podcast as a platform?
Take it as far as it can go.
Okay.
Hopefully we can solve some problems. Hopefully we can get some good education out there. But I would really like to see, you know, because it's not just me. I'm just a monkey with a microphone. I want some great subject matter experts to come in and tell us their experiences and why they got to where they are today. It's one thing to say, hey, we do it this way because that's how the book is written. It's another thing to say, hey, in my 20 years in aviation, I have learned, I have scraped, I have clawed, and I have built myself a career based on great safety policy and tactics. And I'm now able to do this extremely well. And those are the people I want to focus on. I want to focus on the ones who have really made an impact in our industry and have some great knowledge to give to others.
Got it. So that way you can take what they're saying, apply what you know, because you've been in
Hmm.
this a while and you've been really kind of at the forefront of a lot of this. I know you've talked to my brother about this. I know you've talked
Absolutely.
at different NBAA panels and stuff. So people are listening. So I think that's pretty cool that you can take the expertise that you have and kind of facilitate these conversations and get it out there. It's cool to see somebody doing something like that with a platform like this.
Well, thank you. I always say I have just enough knowledge to ask the right questions, but if I was on the answering side, that's where I rely on the people with the real world experience. Yeah,
Hey man, I feel literally exactly the same way. Half the people I talk to know 90% more than I do, but I just know that little 10%. I can start asking questions. So I mean that's a big part of it. Well, and
absolutely.
so where do you? I know you said kind of see where this thing goes, but and it's only episode 3, but
Mhm.
what what impact are you seeing so far from doing this?
Um, Externally, it's doing well on LinkedIn. Got quite a few followers on LinkedIn already. Spotify, Anchor, and Apple. Those are the main platforms I'm putting this out on, and YouTube as well. And it's starting to pick up. A lot of people are saying, "Hey, this is some good knowledge coming out. Could you do this?" And that's what I like to see. I like to see the questions. Hey, that was great. Could we do this? I think Matt, like I said, he was on episode 2. He already said, "Hey, I want to start something for AOG." I said, that would be outstanding. You're in the aircraft on the road every day. Why not do it? So hopefully this inspires other people to pick up a microphone and a camera and do those things, put that information out. Internally for me, though, personally, it's been extremely impactful because I'm having these conversations with some incredible minds that I never thought I would have had before. So like I said, I love doing the speaking engagements at Bombardier and MBAA, but to have a one-on-one conversation with someone with 40 years of aviation experience, it's a little intimidating right off the bat, but
Sure.
it is incredible to see how they view things based on 40 years of aviation versus me with 10 to 12, years of aviation experience.
Yeah, because it's funny because when you're in that space and you're at that amount of years, like 10 to 12, you're like, all right, I've got a pretty good handle. And then you
Mhm.
meet these guys that are basically like black belts in this,
Oh,
and you're like,
exactly.
oh, okay, I have to relearn everything. But I don't know, it's humbling, but it's also kind of exciting because it lets you know that, yeah, okay, I've been doing this for 10 years, but I still got another 30 in me. So
Yeah.
let's see what happens.
Yeah, it's very the things I think were big changes, improvements, and poor things that have happened in our industry. For the people with 40, 50 years turning wrenches and being in the industry, like, hold my beer. All right, you've not seen anything yet. All right, it's going to change a lot, It changes every year, changes every 10 years, changes every 50 years.
Hmm. Yeah, and those are some pretty monumental changes that happen in aviation over 50 years.
Exactly, going from the fuel hog aircraft all the way up to we're launching electric aircraft now. It's incredible to see how the industry has changed so much.
It's
And with
amazing.
that, we need a great foundation of safety to support that as it moves forward.
Yeah, and to keep that record going. I mean, because it's been this safe for a bunch of different reasons, but if there's a breakdown in that communication between all these different teams, um, that's something that needs to be addressed. So it's pretty cool
Exactly.
that you're doing that.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Well, dude, as we wrap this up, is there anything else that you want to touch on?
Um, you know, the podcast only does as well as people want it to do. So, if you wouldn't mind liking and subscribing, and shoot me any topics that we could cover, I think we have some great people that can cover some pretty incredible topics. I would love to see this grow into something monumental, even if it gets out of my hands and into somebody else's who can handle it better. That's fine. I just want this to be a tool that people can use for great safety education.
That's awesome. And so if people have, like you said, with those questions, if people reach out just on LinkedIn, or what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn, a YouTube comment, Spotify comment, whatever you guys would like to do, wherever you watch the podcast, shoot me a note. Tell me to stop doing the podcast. Tell me you want to cover this topic. Either way is fine. Any constructive criticism, I'll definitely use to improve the channel.
Cool. All right, Tim. Thanks for joining me on this. I really appreciate it, man.
Hey, thanks so much. I appreciate that.
Cool. And